Good evening. The show is The Smoking Section. Steve Helfer here every Wednesday, 7 p.m. And tonight I have whom I will call my good friend, I hope, or at least a friend.
Well, we'll see after the day's proceedings are finished.
Bill Cunningham, who is, I think, fairly well known in Cambridge and has been an activist mostly on the housing front, would you say, Bill?
The housing front and the housing rear also.
And also, you know, like with the CHA, and are you still a member of the Alliance
of Cambridge Tenants?
Alliance of.
Yeah.
I always forget whether it's the Alliance of Cambridge Tenants
or the Alliance
for, but it's of.
Oh yes, of
Bill,
by and for the tenants.
And you know, we just had a photograph here of a woman who was in Britain and who was very public about the fact that she wasn't going to quit smoking during her pregnancy. And I think when I was a child, or when I was born, many women smoked when they were pregnant.
Hold it. You said that when you were born, you knew many women who smoked?
No, I said many women smoked when they were pregnant.
At that time,
yes. And right now, most, like a woman would be lynched for being pregnant and smoking these days.
Prove that.
And so I'm just talking about, how I think that it's a myth that, smoking when pregnant is very dangerous to the child. Because, for example, I've done a lot of, I've kind of surveyed people, my mother, well, I didn't survey my mother, but my sister, my brother-in-law's sister, or excuse me, my brother-in-law's sister, that's right, my brother-in-law's mother. Many people in my family, they smoked when they were pregnant, and their children seemed to have no difficulties and weren't born underweight. What do you think? Do you think that it's a myth that smoking during pregnancy is extremely dangerous or not? Do you have an opinion on that?
I think that my own prejudice is that it's a good idea to do all things in moderation anyway.
Yes,
and
right,
that
definitely.
I don't know exactly, haven't made a study of it, but of course you're advised not to take a lot of alcohol or other things when you're pregnant. So, I don't know, actually. I don't really know.
But, I mean, we were told that smoking during pregnancy is something that's really dangerous. I mean, public health officials...
Well, how is it supposed to be dangerous, exactly?
Well, they don't really say that. They just say that it can cause birth defects or low birth weight babies, complications during pregnancy. But as I say, I have surveyed a lot of people in my family and a lot of my sister's friends, and many of them smoked. In fact, they smoked heavily while they were pregnant, and none of them appeared to have any problems with having children. They seemed to be quite...
Popping them right out there.
Well, I don't know about that, but quite healthy, and so...
Well, I don't know. To ask my opinion on something that I haven't studied much, I don't trust... I certainly don't trust a vague assertion that something is very harmful without telling me what it is that was supposed to be the problem. And being a little underweight, I don't know what kind of a problem that is. Today, we seem to be concerned with the opposite problem.
Right.
That people are drinking big gulps while they're pregnant, and their kids come out with a predisposed to more big gulps. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, and in addition to that, I mean, the rates of smoking during pregnancy have, according to the official statistics, approximately 40% of women in 1967 who were pregnant smoked. And now it's much lower. And
it's much lower across the board. So.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But I think it's interesting that for children in this country since that time, as smoking during pregnancy declined and as smoking otherwise declined, rates of asthma, autism, hyperactivity, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, obesity, peanut allergies have all increased among children.
On a slightly different, but really the same idea, I recall when the crack was invented. Crack was invented. And there were all these stories that mothers were smoking this stuff, and there was an enormous tide of crack babies
Oh,
that were
right.
going to come out, and you'd wind up with all these people who are really screwed up later on, and you know, that's not hard to convince me that something like that might have an effect, but it turns out now that the last few years, it's more or less no sign that anything like that
So it
happened.
was debunked, as it were. So to
Pretty
speak,
much, I
by
mean, and that's pretty
experience.
heavy-duty stuff, you know.
Right, that's not a cigarette.
No, it's so, I mean, whether it's debunked in the sense that somebody's out to debunk it, no, it's just like the people who thought that are looking around and trying to prove that it happened, and there's no evidence that there
But it
was.
seems in the war on smoking, you really don't need evidence. You simply, you know, public health officials say, well, I mean, I think any woman who was pregnant and walked into Harvard Square would be, I don't think she would be physically attacked, but I think people would come up to her and say, how could you do this to your baby?
Somebody might do that, that's true.
I think it'd be quite likely. But this particular woman, again, her name is Charlie Wilcox, unapologetic.
Charlie?
Yes, I don't know where it comes from. She's British.
Well.
But she was unapologetic about it. And as a matter of fact, she said her friend quit smoking and her friend had a miscarriage. And Charlie thought that it might have been the stress of quitting smoking that caused her friend's miscarriage. But of course, you know, who knows, as they say.
So she actually just quit smoking, and I see.
Her friend,
Yeah.
you know, under doctor's
Under- yeah,
orders.
okay.
Quit smoking, you're pregnant, you know?
Well, my doctor's orders, when I had it's all about expertise, and it's not necessarily the same issue, but, you know, I became a vegetarian when I was 17.
Is that right? Really?
And I had
didn't
the
know that.
first doctor's exam. My mother was a nurse, so she said, oh, before you go to Boston, give you a doctor's exam. The doctor found out I didn't eat meat. He said, I'm going to die, and not very long from then. The experts said, you know, you have to do exactly what everyone tells you to do, and
Right.
what the latest story was, you know.
Medical authoritarianism.
It is. It's an authoritarianism of the small-time expert who wants to tell you what to do with your
Well,
life.
look, Bill, have you been a vegetarian since you were 17 or 18?
Yeah, I might have accidentally had a few morsels of this and that. I'm not like going to die if somebody feeds me something that I don't
Right.
want. But yeah,
And is
but a
your,
vegetarian, not strict. In the sense the church said don't eat meat on Friday, so I eat fish. Well,
Occasionally or often?
Not too often. No.
do you do that for health reasons or for
It
moral
was
reasons?
ethics originally,
Ethics.
but I thought that it wasn't particularly healthy. But it turns out that people think it is.
But do you still do it more for an ethical
Yeah.
reason? And what is that ethical reason?
Well, I don't want, since I'm not willing to grab a rabbit and wring its neck,
Right.
chop it up, I don't feel like I'm going to eat it. Doesn't bother me to see other people eating it.
Are you a follower of, or let's say an admirer of Peter Singer? Do you know Peter Singer?
I never heard of the guy.
He's a professor at Princeton, and he is very probably one of the most outspoken I believe. I don't know. I've heard. I haven't really, haven't followed him carefully. So I don't want to misspeak. But he's animal rights, and he's been in there for 30 or 40 years, or 20 or 30 years. So a lot of people who are
Well, I'm not a
interested in that.
follower of any professor, actually.
You don't admire academics?
Not particularly. They're the same as you and me.
Oh, is that right? I didn't realize that.
I mean, they have their specialties, but people who have specialties tend to not see a lot of other stuff sometimes, You've run into that, I'm sure.
I don't know. I spent 22 years as a library assistant at Harvard, so
Oh, so you're an academic yourself?
no, I'm not an academic. No, I'm
I'm just kidding.
I'm a
I know,
staff
I
member,
know.
but I've been
But you ran
exposed
into a lot of them.
to a lot of academics, and
I have friends who were academics, but
I mean, it's an interesting world. I think it's got its pros and cons.
yes, I suppose.
You don't think it has any pros, or what?
Oh, sure. Why would people, struggle to get those jobs? If they
Well,
wouldn't
no,
have
but what
pros?
I mean is in terms of
What it contributes.
to
for-
society.
To be sure. I mean,
It does have some good.
oh, of course.
Yeah.
Anybody who specializes in something, I often think of a psychologist or
Right.
priests or anybody, for instance, who spends a great deal of time thinking about the human mind
Right.
and the human emotions. No matter what their school is, no matter how they came to it, they're going to come up with insights, and they're going to have wisdom to share with us. So, yeah, sure, they do a lot of valuable work, but that doesn't mean that what they say on the topic is the last word, because they often don't know the next topic over. They don't know enough about the things around their
They might be
specialty.
narrow-minded, in other words.
They might be. Yeah.
Bill, you were very helpful with us. We, Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights, opposed the park-wide smoking ban, and you spoke very forcefully against it. I know that you don't smoke per se. You're like Dracula. Dracula doesn't drink wine. You don't smoke tobacco.
So you're
You
implying
said-
that I do smoke something.
No, well, you
Right,
said that
right.
at the city council
Yeah.
hearing.
Well-
Did you ever see Bela Lugosi say, "I don't drink wine"? Do you remember that line?
No, Bela Lugosi, what is he, does he live around?
No, but anyway, I'm just talking about the movie Dracula, I think.
Okay, no, there's a lot of movies, Dracula.
Well, you don't know, okay, but what was your opposition to the smoking ban in parks? What was it based on? I don't know, I mean, I'm curious.
Well, the essence of it is that you're talking about, first on the, okay, it's best not to interfere with people's right to enjoy themselves.
Right.
That, as you know, I've said, I don't think there's such a thing as smokers' rights, particularly. I think it's, when you talk about that, you're talking about an aspect of the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, basically, which is, so if you're going to interfere with a citizen or even anybody's right to that, you must have a very strong reason for doing it. Some reason that that is overwhelmingly hits the chins of other people around.
Well, I mean, Councilor Mark McGovern says, "My right to smoke ends when the smoke," I think he said, when the smoke
Something like that.
touches his nose.
But, of course, that's absurd, an absurd degree of, there isn't any real evidence that I've seen that what's called secondhand smoke, unless you're in a room with some that's just packed with smoke all the time, that's not in any way equivalent to smoking. So if you think that smoking is harmful, and you just go on and say, well, that means that any presence, when you're around anybody who's smoking at all, it's pretty much the same thing. I don't buy that. And I think that, of course, there's always a class issue. It's interesting that it's parallel with the liberalization of the marijuana laws.
Right.
That really doesn't much affect the ordinary working class or poor kid, because
Yes.
you're not supposed to smoke this stuff in public anymore. But if you're down in Brattle Street or you're in your own home, you can go ahead and it's the same thing with smoking.
Right.
On the park, the person who has their own home and a nice big backyard doesn't need the park that much. It's the ordinary everyday.
Do you think
people
it's
like
possible that part, as I say, part of the motivation of banning smoking in parks is to get the homeless out of the parks as a way to kind of, these people do utilize the parks, make the parks more tourist-friendly? Do you think that's a reason for it, part?
Well, I don't think it's because they are concerned with the health of the homeless.
No, that's for sure.
But
It
I
doesn't
think
appear
that,
to be. Yeah,
I think
right.
it's important for all of us that work in political, in any way, to know that different people have different motivations, and things happen because folks with different motivations come together in a kind of a coalition to
Right.
get things done. So you have the
perfect
health people
storm.
who are making money off of this. You have the fact that the tobacco settlements produce a lot of money that has to be spent, and there are people who are collecting on that. And then there are people who are genuinely concerned with health, the people who've had relatives die of a disease that they attribute to cigarettes. They're
Right.
all, it's all. So yeah, there are definitely people that use that kind of excuse to get the homeless out. Definitely there are. But it's not just the homeless, it's anybody that's kind of an ordinary person who likes to smoke and
Right.
doesn't own their own home.
So it's a kind of regressive law. It has
It's
more of an
class-
impact
it's a
on
class,
that.
It has a class war aspect, as almost everything does.
But this is almost targeted because smoking among lower income people and people with mental disabilities is far higher than among
It is anyway, yes.
the rest of the population. So this is almost targeting specifically at lower income people.
It is, but of course, we don't speak of that in our society. We never talk about class. That's the one thing you can't really talk about when you're talking about the various impacts. You can't actually legislate by class. You can't protect social economic classes with special legislation. You can punish them by implication, like just in a case like we're talking about now.
Right.
You know, and you don't care about them because they can't protect themselves anyway. They don't have.
They don't have a lot of political power.
They don't have the social and political power, and they don't have the confidence to get up and say, you know, that's bullshit, man. What you're talking about, you know.
Right. It's hard to mobilize those people, particularly.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was interesting at the city council hearings that there was not, I mean, in the 3 hearings I was at, and I was maybe at 4, I can't remember, not one person from the city of Cambridge spoke in favor of these policies,
right,
except for grant-funded activists. That was incredible to me.
That's almost the case with when we went through the public housing hearings. You know,
here at Cambridge, yeah,
yes,
right.
That the only people that among the residents who spoke in favor of the smoking ban were people who were physically smelled smoke from their neighbors, and that they didn't like it.
But they were very, very few of them.
There weren't many of them, and so as the hearings went on, the authority, noticing that that was the case, brought in more of the experts.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that. All of a sudden, they started coming from the Harvard School of Public Health, and you know,
well, I don't really live in Massachusetts, but I'm an expert, so I'm here to tell you.
Well, Bill, I like to go to a smoker of the week just to so we can go out and have a cigarette, you know, during this, you know, because we can't have a cigarette
like
here.
to go to a smoker in the?
No,
okay.
we will go to our smoker of the week
okay.
today. Okay, let's see if I can figure this out. Okay, here we go. Aha, here is one of my heroes.
There he is.
And tonight I asked a friend of mine named Borghild Whittington. That's my friend, Borghild Whittington.
Is that a real name?
Yes, it is. It's a name after a piece of music. Her father was a concert violinist named Rudolf Kafka. And I know it's the same name as a famous writer. But
no, Rudolph isn't his one. No.
Anyway, and well...
You mean Rudolph? I don't know who's Rudolph. Okay,
Kafka. And let's see, and this is an interesting thing to me is that when Raoul Amundsen got to the South Pole in 1911, in December, and being the first recorded discovery, I guess you might say, of the South Pole, or arrival there.
First European to get there, yes.
But I mean, there was no other, I mean, there were no, like, natives living in the South Pole.
As far as we know.
You know, except for the space aliens.
Aliens,
they must have been there, yes.
For God's sake.
He got there in 1911, and the first thing he did when he got to the South Pole was smoke tobacco.
Why?
Why? I guess he enjoyed tobacco.
It couldn't have been too cold. How would he get the pipe in and out of his mouth?
I don't know how cold it was when they actually arrived there, but that was the first thing he did, and it's kind of interesting because, to me, how much polar explorers use tobacco. For example, Robert Falcon Scott, who also was kind of in a race with Raoul Amundsen, got to the pole.
Yes, yes.
And the first thing he did, too, was have some cigarettes.
Well, you know what? You know, now you've just really hurt your own cause because...
How so?
Well, I imagine that the origin of the hole in the ozone has something to do with
Is that right?
smoking.
Yeah. Well, you know, there
wasn't any hole in the ozone before they started smoking down there. You know?
There are some people who do, you know, blame cigarettes for, at least partially, for global warming, but...
well,
fortunately,
right next to you, it is a little warmer.
I think actually Al Gore is recently now starting to talk about how smokers are...
What a nerve.
Well, I guess so.
His father certainly didn't put tobacco down.
That's true. That's true.
I guess the politics has changed.
Well, I mean, you know, people, you know, for example, I often in my last program I talked about some of the ways the Obama administration is going after smokers, and one of the things that comes direct, and people does say to me, oh, well, Obama's a smoker. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem, I don't know why that's even relevant.
It doesn't matter. He could
be a smoker or a non-smoker. All I know is that, for example, one of the things, I recently went to the law school, which is where I worked for 22 years, and there are all these kind of posters around saying this is, it's not only, is it a
smoke-free facility.
It's not only, no, not a smoke-free, it's tobacco, 100% tobacco-free. So, for example, that would mean, for example, if you were a faculty member or a student or a staff member and you were a smoker, it really, you wouldn't really be able to work there very easily, because you would have to leave the campus simply to have a smoke break. And this is something that the Obama administration, directly from the White House, according to what I've read, wants to make every campus in the United States tobacco-free. Now, I don't exactly know what that means. Does that mean...
Can't chew it, can't snort it.
Right, I guess, and I don't know if you're found in possession of it, or do you immediately lose your tenure if you're a professor, or get fired if you're a staff member, or expelled as a student? Why do you think Obama would be so adamant about that?
Thinking that
what does he have to gain?
The man himself doesn't strike me as anyone who is adamant about much of anything. So I imagine that he's simply somebody in his administration has decided this is a good idea, and he's just, you know, done a poll and figured that he'll gain more than he loses by it, frankly.
Yes.
I don't think that, I don't picture him as having any real strong views on that.
Right, no, probably not, probably not.
But it's not really a matter of, you know, I'm certainly not carrying water for any of these administrations, as you know. I'm agreeing and highly critical of the stuff that they all do. But I think this is just part of a process that's been continuing right through, more or less intensifying over time. I know there's ups and downs with different administrations. You mean you're talking about the tobacco, the war on tobacco? Yeah. I mean, why is the government, do you have an opinion as to why not only the United States government, I mean, it considers tobacco, like under Obamacare, if you are obese and you are a heroin addict and you have hepatitis C, you cannot be charged more for your insurance. But if you have no diagnosed medical conditions, but you smoke or use tobacco in any form, Obamacare encourages insurance companies to charge you a 50% higher premium. Which they've been doing that to some degree anyway, but you mean that, but how do they know that you're a smoker?
Well, because by under penalty of perjury, you have to say under penalty of perjury. So I mean, you can lie about it, and I don't think they are giving people nicotine, testing their blood for nicotine, but it puts you in a very uncomfortable position, and theoretically, you could be prosecuted for perjury. So
I know when actually that may have something to do. Didn't really know about this policy, but I know that there are new questionnaires. When I go to my doctor, and that's one of the things.
Tobacco, yes.
You know, like last year, it was a new questionnaire, and one of the things they ask you is whether you smoke tobacco. But it's in a whole series of other things, so I never struck me.
But tobacco is the only thing that, again, under the Affordable Health Care Act, what is it, ACA, Affordable Care Act, that, like, for example, if you call up, you know, to find out about the insurance, they'll ask you two questions, from what I understand. One is how old you are, and the other is, do you smoke?
Have you asked them? Have you tried this yourself?
No, but I've gotten this, I've been no, I don't, because I haven't called them up.
You should.
Well, no, but I've been told this. I go to an institute at the Harvard Law School called the Petrie Flom Institute. It has to do with law and medicine. So this is something that's very well known under Obamacare. So I myself personally don't have direct experience of this.
I frankly, I mean, I believe you, but I found in my housing field things repeated over and over and over and over again. And when you look it up, you know, it's not accurate.
No, I understand.
So you want to get it,
No,
if
but
it's
this-
easy to confirm.
Well, I have not called up Obamacare, but I've read many, many newspaper accounts and spoken to people who are medical professionals and involved at Harvard with, you know, and that this has been confirmed over and
Easy
over.
for you to just call it, because
Well, no, it
you know
isn't.
what academics
Yeah,
do?
right.
Somebody writes an article and they state a fact, and then from then on,
No, I understand. Well, this is fact, Bill. Believe me.
I
Please
believe it, but I would confirm it.
I mean, but
But I don't
in
know
other words,
why
are you?
they,
Are you? I mean, I'm usually.
You're asking me
listen,
why I
don't-
think they're doing this.
No, yeah,
And
well-
I don't really know why.
No, just be curious, but it seems the ferocity of the anti-smoking movement, and particularly within the Obama administration, is almost difficult to explain. You know, Bill, it's been great having you on.
You mean, this
we're
is
getting
it?
we're getting up against the end of it, and I just encourage anybody to go to our Facebook page, where you will be able to see. Bill, we'll be on. You know, if you will be able to see this program on Facebook, and you know, over and
People
over
put
again,
their
you can
phone
watch
up
it.
on that thing and get